Hey, Maria. Oh, wow. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Okay, so this is awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. I'm in Dr. Larry Crenshaw's office, and this is an amazing space. It's beautiful, and I just took time out today to come by for a chat.
Welcome to the couch. I'm Dr. Larry Crenshaw, and today it's my privilege to have a dear friend with me, Maria Lana Queen, a local artist here in Washington, D.C., who used art. And I'll let Maria share her own story. But Maria, welcome to the couch.
Thank you, Larry. I'm excited to be here at the couch. It's actually more than a couch. It's the environment. It's the space. So it's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. This is your first time here.
It's my first time, and it's delightful. It's pleasant. So
I wanted it to have that experience. That if you were coming over for coaching or counseling or whatever you were coming over for, that it was in an area that felt safe and it felt comforting and it felt welcoming, and that's.
Listen, when I walked up, I got off the elevator, I could hear the music, like positive vibes coming in the door. I knocked on the door and I'm going, what am I going to see? I know Larry, I know his presence, I know his style, but I didn't imagine this. So I come in and I'm embracing this space like, I want to be here. And I feel very comfortable. I mentioned to you, it doesn't feel like an office or a space where I'm going to talk to a therapist and then walk out and scratch my head like, what just happened? It feels like a home. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So tell me, your art is amazing, right? And we love your art. But tell me a little bit about what brought you into the art space.
Okay, so I could talk forever about this, but I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet. So about 24 years ago, unexpectedly, one of my brothers passed away, and my friend Margaret gave me a set of art supplies to deal with grief. She is an art collector, art lover, lives and breathes art. And because we're so close, she thought if I could find a way to express my feelings on paper or canvas or paint whatever I was going through, paint that away, then that would be my form of therapy or helping me get to grief. So that sort of morphed into my being a self-taught artist. And then it became this even better relationship with Marva because we started to basically discover art together, discover life, and then suddenly her son passed away. And then I had to use my art and even my art creations to actually help her get through grief. So that's kind of how this started. But most people know me prior to art as having a passion for fashion. And so there's a whole different world out there to me, with that as well. But the art is my life now. That's me.
I like that. The pivot to, or not the pivot, but really the inclusion of art and fashion. Like, I like to think that fashion is a part of art, right?
It really is. It really is.
And so when you said, well, what should I wear tomorrow? And I said, well, wear whatever you want. And then you mentioned what we should wear and the story behind that.
Yes, it's so we're 1968 babies, all right. Generation X, yes. And I knew you had the same T-shirt that I have.
You actually gave me this at your 50th birthday, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And so I'm, of course I'm going to put fashion to anything I do. So So I was thinking, do I wear a suit? Do I wear something that I painted? Or whatever. I woke up and I'm thinking t-shirt. It's a t-shirt for me and jeans today. And then I thought, wait, we have a 1968 t-shirt. So here we are. And I love it. And so it's t-shirt and jeans today.
But I love it. I like that I was able to find mine because I can't find anything sometimes in my closet.
It worked out.
Yeah. So you mentioned art being a form of therapy for you, right? And you know, it's interesting because sometimes I think that some of the most simplest things, you know, that we forget to think about as we get older is the inclusion of things like art and activity and, you know, just having a full balanced life.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many people that they forget about those simple things. And so, you know, I like that. You know, there's theory behind the whole concept of how art helps us to diffuse the negative energy that we may be experiencing and utilize that energy to do something that's bigger and broader, that's healing. And it sounds like you get a healing.
I do, and as you see, I have this big smile on my face when I talk about it. Even though, you know, I'm human, right? So I have my sad moments, I go through emotions just like anybody else. But when I talk about art, it takes me to a happy space, a more positive space. Depending on what's going on in life, you know, the climate we live in, the current situations that we're going through, I always have to say to myself, okay, so what does this mean and how do you move forward? And also, how do you use your talent and art to help others move forward? So it continues to be therapy for me. And I just resort to my space, which is my art studio in my home. And it's rare that I have anyone join me in my space when I'm painting. They can come to visit me or see my works afterwards, but it's my private space. And it's the time that I feel like I can talk to myself. I can try to apply some things that maybe I have learned in therapy. And I start just picking up my paint palette and getting some ideas that are on my mind, and I just pour that out. They're not always happy ideas. They could be related to politics, unfortunately, how I deal with that, advocacy, resilience, and or maybe just family and, you know, and culture. So I channel all of that, and I place my feelings on mediums such as paper and canvas, and that's what I do.
I love that. You know, we have some of your pieces, and we have one at the place in DC that it has a very significant presence.
Yeah, is that Black Girl? Because there's a couple of them, or is it? I don't know. I've titled so many paintings forever. Back to the Basics. Back to the basics.
Yeah.
It has numbers and alphabets.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the basics.
and so you had a series where numbers and they played a significant role. Tell us about that.
So, well, actually, everyone has this thing with numbers, right? Numbers define us. Birth dates, social security numbers, unfortunately some people who have been incarcerated, numbers. And so I went, you know, again, dealing with grief, I had to find a space where I was going back to the basics. I called it back to the basics. You know, to move away from the chaos and or whatever you can't get through to get a breakthrough. So I decided to paint, you know, alphabets, numbers, back to the basics, you know, like removing myself from so much that I can actually go to a space where I was thinking about maybe more of a minimal situation that did not require a lot of thinking or trauma or drama. And so I decided to just start creating numbers, and I said alphabets, but numbers, you know, that were significant to me. And they just had to do more or less with specific event dates, again, birthdays, and or something as simple as 1, 2, 3, which is what we all learned as we are, you know, learning and growing as children. So that's back to the basics.
And I love that, back to the basics. And that really is sometimes what life and what healing is all about. It's about going back to those basic strengths that we had, and identifying pathways in order to get to wherever we're trying to go in our journey.
Yes.
Yeah.
That statement alone is where I am now and what I've been painting for several years now. And I'm looking at this basketball, but we'll talk about it because it has tracks, which represents my journey and pathways. Most collectors know, or people who appreciate my work know that I paint tracks. I tend to have some iconic images in my work. Those images symbolize where I am, but also where we are as people. So I have tracks that I paint, passages, pathways through life, which represent the decisions we make. So on most of my paintings, you'll get a story, but if you look closely, you'll always find tracks, and you say, there's Maria Lana's tracks there, where you can reflect on what is your story, what do those tracks mean, and so that's how I begin to tell my story. My brother, when he passed away, sadly, he had tracks that I noticed on his arm because he had a substance use challenge. And so because of that, that stuck in my mind. And initially the track started to represent that memory, but I, again, tried to channel something positive like tracks. They're pathways and decisions that we're making in life, so.
I like that because, you know, so many times I feel like people walk through life and they forget the path that has taken them to wherever they've arrived at that present moment. And, you know, I work with my clients on celebrating each milestone that they make in their life. When they make small goals, celebrating those small micro goals, but also having larger goals that then when they have that collective celebration, they're able to achieve. Now, you said that initially that art was something that provided you with a sense of therapy and release. And even to this day, you talk about how the significance of art allows you to do that. But you've become very collectible, I'll say, right?
Yeah, that's a blessing. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about some of the installations you have and you know, the shows and exhibits.
Thank you. So there's so many people that I have to basically thank for getting me and for collecting me, for one, believing me, and to thank. So that Margaret Street started me. She's a collector, but basically she started showing my work to some prominent art galleries and you know, owners, and because she believed in me. So it took that person to believe in me. You know, Parish Art Gallery, historically known in Washington, D.C., was a fine, African-American fine art gallery. I did a couple of solo exhibits to premiere my work there, and I did very well. Eastern Market was historically known for showing work. But I'm also now a part of the Nowhere Art Gallery on Martha's Vineyard. Valerie Francis and her husband Ralph. I was in the Biennale, Venice Biennale last year through that gallery, showing my work in Italy. The Larry and Brenda Thompson collection, which is now in the Georgia Museum of Art, and they have my piece featured in that museum. And like Adrian Childs, just a phenomenal curator known in the African American art world. People have believed in me, and I just have to say, just thank you. There's so many people I can thank. Sandra Grimes on the Vineyard, who again showed my work. So it's helped. One thing has led to the other, and of course, just private collectors throughout the D.C. area, New York, etc. I'm just grateful. So I thank everybody.
That's good. You know, it's I find it very interesting that something that you reintroduced into your life, and you did it as a form of therapy. But tell me, you know, was there any other therapy or counseling that you had at any point throughout your life?
You know, I can't say so. That's the weird thing. And I didn't know that therapy could be so important until I had to experience it for myself. And again, you know, I don't know, every other person that I've spoken with today has had some form of mental health therapy lately, and I think people are okay with speaking about that. I never thought I'd need therapy. I was very uncomfortable with therapy. Like, are you kidding? I don't need therapy. But you know what? It helps to talk to somebody. And I think with therapy, that person listens to you, if anything, and then gives you the homework to go home and try to do something to better your life. So you asked me if I had therapy before. When my brother passed, I had a form of a session with a therapist, and it was helpful. But it was not like I'm sitting here right now. Again, I walked away going, okay, I'm in an office. I'm talking, and they're listening, and I've got homework to do. Yes, it was helpful, but it was through art. Again, I had to figure out my life. How was that going to be for me in the future? And again, art. Art speaks to me mentally, and you know, I know it's crazy to talk about this, but I just feel like as I said, when I'm in my space, that is my own form of therapy, and I'm getting better at expressing myself. Where maybe verbally, I may not wish to say exactly what's on my mind, might get in trouble politically wise, but I can certainly put it down in art visually, and then let the world interpret that. So I'm releasing myself, my feelings, how I feel in that way.
I like that. I like that, releasing yourself to how you feel. And so a typical day for an artist. So you were in a fashion show a couple weeks ago, Harvey Star Washington's fashion show. And I was sitting next to someone, and she said, "Who's her trainer?"
I love that. That means something is working, right?
Yeah, so.
Well, okay, a typical day for me. I like to work out. I don't get to do it as much, but I find that when I don't, I miss it, and then my body, obviously your body is going to react. So I try to make sure I do some form of cardio. If it's walking, if it's getting on a Stairmaster, I see you got the Peloton bikes in there. I do that for me, and I feel good about that. And I used to go to the gym like on a daily basis, and I got familiar with the machines and the equipment. And then I said, I can do all this at home in my space. That way, when I finish, I can quickly run downstairs to my art studio. So I have a regimen where I try to work out at least 30 minutes a day. And maybe not every day, but at least 3 days a week. And it's cardio, 10 minutes. It's lifting those weights because I want to tone. And then it's doing some fun ab work because I'm a model and I'm crazy, and call me vain, but I love fashion and I like to look good. but I also like to motivate people. So doesn't matter what size you are. The cardio is important because that's longevity. So I always encourage folks, hey, pick up a jump rope or just walk and get some fresh air. So that's what I do. And then I paint. And that's it.
I like that. You know, it's a full day, but
it's a full day.
It sounds like it's a part of you.
It's a part of me, but I'm an extrovert, so you're gonna get like a lot from me. So I love to cook, and I like to prepare meals, and entertain too. And then I'm a family person, so I'm the caregiver of my mom. She's 93. I have to make time for my mom, but also invite people into my home when I can. And I just like to socialize, but I also like to resort to private space. We all need that private space. And so that's my balance. It's workout, it's art, it's socializing, but it's also resorting to a private space. And, spending time with the people that you love and or the person that you love. So that's what I do.
Okay, I love that. And so tell us a little bit more about this piece that you brought over today, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so in January when we had a winter snowstorm in DC, as an artist I was kind of bored. We get bored, and I started thinking about why am I bored for one, but I felt a little. I think I was also feeling a little deflated. I actually did a video of this, like after. It had to do with, maybe politics, whatever. I felt deflated. And so I said, what's the best way to move past this? So I started inflating some basketballs that were in my art studio. And then I decided, because I was bored, paint the basketball and, you know, create. I have a series titled Black Girl, Black Boy. I'm known for painting black girls. You see, I'm an abstract artist, so you see an image of a black girl, and I put her on this basketball. And it's a female's basketball, so, you know, I'm also channeling the empowerment of women in sports and how they've empowered the Professional Basketball Association. And so I love basketball, female basketball. I don't know how to play it, but I decided to paint basketballs. And that's what that one represents. That's one of my basketballs. Yeah.
I love it. I love
Thank
it.
you.
It's a great piece. I
Yeah.
can't play basketball, but I love basketball.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's gonna those basketballs are gonna premiere in New York May 8th through the 11th. And the 154 Contemporary African Art Exhibit in New York City. So, you know, I'm excited about that. They're gonna be there in addition to my newer works, larger
So
works.
May 8th through the 11th.
Through the 11th in New York City, yes.
In New York City.
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
see the excitement on your face.
I'm gonna walk, and I think I'm gonna walk around Times Square with one of them and try to lure people down to the show to see the rest of them.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
And so that's what I get excited about, because there's so many stories like yours, you know, that are beautiful, but where someone was faced with an adversity or a challenge, and how they were able to use that adversity or challenge to reignite their life. And I mean, your story is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. It's divine intervention. I follow my faith. Even in my artwork, you always find a little cross somewhere there. Again, my story, but I feel like it's divine intervention. Again, you know, Marva giving me these art supplies. You know, we are, you know, we love art. We're living our you know, our lives together. You know, has been centered around art and so much more. And it took a person giving me a set of art supplies. She saw something in me, and then I again use that to help her get through. It's just a thing. So we all have something. We have skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be painting, writing, or anything. But I think we have God-given talent, and this is, I feel, my purpose now, to use that through art.
Through art.
Yeah.
Tell your story.
Yes, to tell my story and to hopefully along the way help other people, inspire people, and to preserve history. My art also talks about the African American culture, and I chime in on history, where some may want to erase. I always say, well, then I will replace, and I use that to make sure that the facts are there through my art narrative, especially for young people who may not see this or learn about it in history books. Perhaps they can see it in my art narrative.
One of my professors during my doctoral studies sent back a paper with a note and said, "I understand what these people said. What do you say?" And you know, that's the important thing about our journey in life, is getting to a place where we see a significance in what our message is, or what our ministry is. And I think that's a ministry that you have through your art, where you are ministering to minds and, you know, and the visual interpretations of people.
I love that. I have never heard that, but that's the most incredible thing I've heard about my art ministry, because in a way, you're right. When I'm able to talk about my work and I see the expression that people have, or expressions that people have, and then the questions that they ask, and or if I just step back and say nothing and I see them reflecting on the work, that is a form of ministry in a way, if it draws them to it. And then they're able to hopefully find themselves in it, and or say, I learned something new today, or I feel so much better or maybe it's a quiet space where if I'm speaking about like I paint strange fruit, you know, I paint about that. And that's nothing to be proud or happy about, but it's history. But I can take people to that space and they then really feel, they gravitate towards it, and maybe they go home and reflect, or they feel like, you know, interesting time, and you know, perseverance is important and resilience is important based on our history. So ministry, that's I like that. I like that, Larry.
I like
Remember
that, right? You take that with you.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, if there was one final thing that you could share with a young person, maybe it's an older person, and they've been challenged by something, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's the impact of the economy, you know, what would you tell them about art if you had to sum it up in just a 2-minute response?
I would say, don't get stressed. Find yourself in a happy space. Look at art and reflect on that. Hopefully it will change you for that moment of time. So resort someplace, almost as a distraction, but use that as a positive moment. And, you know, just have your mindset focused on something almost meditative, reflective, and then walk away and take a deep breath and know that it's going to be okay, day by day. And do what I did. Try to figure out something else to do other than to stress. If it's painting, if it's exercising, if it's writing, if it's visiting a museum, do it. That stuff is free.
It's free,
and so
right?
free your mind and try to get out of that zone if you can. That, you know, hopefully will allow you to find your pathway and stick to it, day by day.
Wow, that's deep. I like that. I love that. And so, oh my God, I'm so thankful and so appreciative of your coming by and
Glad you
sitting
invited
down
me
on
here.
the couch.
I love this. If everyone can see what I'm seeing and experiencing this is amazing. It's the space you want to be at if you can. But this is just beautiful. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank
The vibe
you,
is
Maria.
great.
So, to everyone, I so appreciate your tuning in to this episode of On the Couch and meeting my friend Maria Lana Queen. And, you know, as always, I love to share positive information about mental health, wellness, and mental hygiene. And so, please join us again when we'll sit down with another friend and they'll share something that may be valuable and may speak to someone. So until next time. Until next time.
I mean, it's been great. It's been great to be here.
Thank you.